Welcome to Resilience in Life and Leadership with your host, Stephanie Olson. Hello, and I am happy to introduce to you Carrie Leaf today. Carrie is currently a practicing psychotherapist, life coach, and hypnotherapist. She holds her undergraduate degree in psychology with a minor in sociology from the University of Northern Iowa. She completed her master's degree in marriage and family therapy, graduating top of her class, and she has been a practicing psychotherapist for over 10 years, working in the psychology field for over 15. Carrie has worked in the field of psychology in a wide variety of settings, which includes hospitals, community mental health, youth residential homes, substance abuse, and more. She is a mother to two twin toddler boys and a stepmother to their older brother and sister as well. She is a fur baby mom to two boxer dogs, and she enjoys working out and exploring her health and fitness journey, staying active, nature, and being outdoors, traveling and trying new things. Welcome, Carrie Leaf. Hello, and welcome to the Resilience in Life and Leadership podcast. And I am so excited to have Carrie Leaf with me. Carrie, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. Well, Carrie, tell us a little bit. You are doing some amazing things in the work of resilience, really. Tell me a little bit about what it is that you are doing and how you got there. That's a loaded question, but.
Sure. Yes. It goes back a long ways, but don't know how much detail you want there, but in general, I'm currently a psychotherapist and mindset coach. In my practice, I take a really holistic approach. It's important to me to integrate and look at mind, body, and spirit and really connect all the dots and have the full picture. You know, our society likes to separate those things and they just cannot be separated. Right. They really all need to be paid attention to. And in my opinion, and professionally, that's where I see the results. So yes, it doesn't matter what we're working on. I'm going to take that same approach with everybody. But I going backwards a little bit, you know, I did my undergrad in psychology and master's in marriage and family therapy. So really heavily trained in systems theory approach and looking at every angle.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's really important because I think our society tends to be a very reactive society instead of proactive. And I think all of those things you're talking about, if you can get ahead of that to really bring healing in whatever aspect of life that is. So tell me a little bit, because I know that you work in trauma and you work in families and all of those things. How did you get involved? Was there something personal that led you in that direction?
Oh, that's a good question. Yes, of course. Right. That drives us to where we go. It's I can go all the way back to middle school age. My parents forced me to go to therapy. I was resistant. I didn't want to go. I was being, just kind of a little bit of a bratty, rebellious teen. And so they just,
we don't do that in middle school. That's crazy. Yeah.
Yes. And so, right. And I went resistant and, I remember being a little bit the poor counselor, like I wouldn't talk for the first session or two, like you got nothing out of me, but eventually I remember like opening up a bit and how much better I felt when I finally did. And I took a lot more from that than I would have thought. And then, also kind of examining in that same age frame, middle school, high school. Yeah. And when my friendships were becoming, extremely important to me and exploring those relationships and what they mean and why do they play such a big role. And, then kind of realizing like, okay, I can't imagine life without these relationships. And then also looking at the relationship that you have with yourself. And then that's what led to, the marriage and family. And that emphasis on relationships and looking at the big picture. And my dad was a high school guidance counselor and taught at the community college there as well. So I was just raised with that kind of lingo and discussing thoughts and feelings along the way as well.
Right. That sounds really good. So I have a question based on that. What would you say? This was just a topic that I was talking to somebody about just the other day, about forcing your teen to go to therapy. What would your response be? Because there are kiddos that are extremely resistant to that. And I can almost imagine it taking them into a different direction.
Yeah, you never know. One thing that I suggest for clients that might have either a resistant teen or spouse, a lot of times they want to get their spouse in.
Sure.
I encourage them to say, maybe try humoring me, give it one shot, show up once. If you absolutely hate it, it's not for you. Okay. That's your choice. Therapy doesn't work if it's forced, right? The
Right.
person's got to want to go there. But when we look at my case as a teen, how did I know? There's no way I was going to know what therapy was like, or if I would get anything out of it until I tried, right? Until
Right.
I was there in that situation. So I just encourage people to just say, humor me, give it one shot. If it's what I do with my little kids, like in their supper, take one bite. If you don't like it, I'm not going to force you to eat it.
Right.
But take one bite and see if you like it, because you never know. So
that's good.
Yeah.
So you have a ton of expertise in different areas. I mean, I'm on your website right now, which is a great website, by the way, carrieleaf.com. And I mean, from anxiety and stress and trauma and life balance to health and fitness and weight loss, what are you seeing most often right now, especially in whether it be in youth, whether it be in families and marriages, especially coming out of, well, I say coming out, but I'm not sure if we're coming out of this pandemic. I mean, there's such an increase in anxiety and depression and those trauma related experiences. What are you seeing?
All the things you just said, but anxiety has been on the spike regardless. When I started my career, and then when I got into, I was doing counseling on a university campus for a year there. And I just remember kind of being blown away with the amount of students coming in and saying anxiety. And I was like, where this, I didn't have this level when I first started my career. It just skyrocketed. And I do believe a lot of that has to do with social media.
Absolutely.
So I think that's a big part of it. But then you're right, the pandemic, it skyrockets anxiety because the unknown, right?
Right.
We can't predict the future regardless, but when that big unknown is in our face right there every day with the pandemic, if we're focusing on that and what's to come next, the anxiety just shoots up. So I would say anxiety, hands down, has definitely gone up, but it's all gone up.
Yeah, absolutely. So in my real work, I do prevention education in the area of human trafficking and healthy relationships and social media safety. And we go into the schools. In fact, Des Moines is one of our big school districts. We're very close to each other. So I love that. But one of the things we've seen as students are just, I mean, with that anxiety, the amount of disclosures of difficult things that they're experiencing, whether it be human trafficking or sexual abuse and physical abuse or whatever it may be, but just even the amount of behavior challenges in the schools that we're seeing has just increased tremendously. Can you speak to that at all, and what you would tell, whether it be parents or educators or anybody working with youth, on how to deal with a situation like that?
Oof, that's a
Loaded.
big loaded.
Yes.
Yes, big loaded one right there, because you know, there's so many different things generationally. You know, when I grew up, I didn't have social media. I didn't barely have the internet. We didn't have cell phones. There
Yeah.
wasn't instant access. There wasn't cyberbullying. There
Yeah.
wasn't, you know, I don't remember hearing about sex trafficking and, you
Yeah.
know, as a kid, not that it wasn't there, right? But
Hmm.
we weren't privy. And you know, so I think that where we go with that is really probably individual to each issue, each family, each
Yeah.
topic. But in general, I think I can't stress enough, you know, our watching our exposure as a family, you know, whether that's screen time, whether that's the news, whether that's social media, letting kids be kids and having
Right.
kids, you know, stay in kid things like school and sports and being outside. Those kind of things, I just think are instant, you know, access to a zillion different problems in the world
Yeah.
just creates stress and trauma. And you know, I don't remember ever hearing of a school shooting growing up, you
I
know.
know.
But now, of course, if I were a kid and I heard about it, that would be terrifying and my
Yeah.
anxiety would spike.
Yeah.
Right. So I think monitoring our what we're allowing into our lives and how much of it and in what way.
Absolutely. And it's really challenging. You're absolutely right, because we are kind of, and I'm older than you, but we are a first generation parent of parenting children who have only known a life of social media. It
Right.
is a completely different world, and it really does change everything. And when you've got all that, you've got that dopamine being released from, okay, I get a like, I get a like, I get a follow, whatever it may be. It really does change the dynamic of really of our mental health and wellness.
Yes. And you know, there's so many things, like you said, as the parents, like monitoring that and knowing what they're being exposed to is really, I mean, I don't, maybe impossible, you know, on some levels, but it's a really hard thing to do. And I do think, you know, I grew up and we would sit down and dinner was together every night, and that's when the day was
Yes.
discussed, right? And not that I liked that at the time all the time or wanted to talk all the time, but you know, it was predictable and it was routine and it was expected. So
Yeah.
if I knew I would have the opportunity, or you know, those things were going to be asked or addressed, you know, then. And if we're all living in the same house but living separate lives in separate rooms on separate electronics, there isn't that safe space to
Right.
process our day.
Exactly. Yeah. That is one of the big and it gets harder the older they get because everybody's on the go, but that's one of the
Hmm.
things. We do our best to have dinner together, no media at the table, and it's definitely challenging. It's something that has to be very intentional. So,
Yes,
yeah.
yes. It's a lot to, like you said, when there's extracurriculars and sports and
Yeah.
you know, all the things, it is hard to get that routine down.
Right, it is. So, can you speak to the stigma of mental illness? I was just talking to someone the other day who was having a discussion with her friend about her daughter is struggling with mental illness, but she refuses to give her any medication because there is just such a concern. And it really comes down to stigma. It comes down to, well, I don't see it the same as any other disease. It's, everybody's over medicating. And although I agree that sometimes there is a quick fix in medication, that sometimes it's really imperative and it has to be done. Can you speak to any of that?
Absolutely. So, you know, I do take that holistic approach, and
Hmm.
I'm going to want things as organic as possible.
Hmm.
So, that's not I kind of have a love-hate with medications. You know, and there's reasons for that over my experience and my practice, but I'm never going to rule them out. They're my
Right.
last resort.
That's good.
Um they're my last resort, because of all the side effects, or because of
Mhm.
what they can do to our gut health, or because of, there's a lot, sometimes they create more issues than the one that they solve. And like you said, if we're using medications, sometimes we're throwing we're, like you said, reacting, and I'm
Right.
treating the symptom. I'm not figuring out the cause. So if somebody is on a medication, then I really, really want and encourage them to also be in therapy, and also looking at the
Yes.
other avenues where their life isn't in alignment, and where they're not functioning their best. But they also, medications also save lives, so they can really turn somebody's lives around. So when they work, they truly work. We don't want
Right.
to discard them. So what I like to do, if I'm working with somebody, is I'm going to evaluate their level of severity. Is your life manageable? Are the symptoms manageable, where we can give this 3 to 6 months and see if we can get some improvements in therapy, and talking this out, and working on, whatever issues they may need to work on, and then boost up, fitness and health and those kind of things.
Right.
Or are you so severe that, you're destroying parts of your life? It's crumbling. You can't even get out of bed. You're going to lose your job. Then we might need to jump to a medication pretty quick, because
Sure.
that medication may need to be that bridge, that stepping stone from, I'm in this deep, dark hole, to I need to get my footing, and then I can start building my foundation. And then in the hopes, hopefully, that we can decrease and get off the
Right.
medication. Right.
Right.
But there are those issues where it's going to be a lifelong med as well. And we really got to sift through, and we've got to filter that and figure that out. And it's a process, and it's a journey. But a lot of people do, as far as the stigma goes, a lot of people do think going into therapy or being on medications means I have a severe problem.
Mm.
Not necessarily. No, it might just mean a life transition.
Right.
This is my approach. And I've seen those meds be transitional and short term, and do wonders for clients to get them to the next step.
Mm-hmm. I love that, because I think you could say the same thing with nutrition. There are so many diseases, diabetes being one of them, diabetes 2 being one of them, where it can be caused by poor nutrition or obesity, things like that. Am I correct in that?
Oh my goodness. Yes, 100%. There's, that brain gut connection
Yeah.
is so true and so strong that half the time what we're thinking are mental health symptoms are actually physical health symptoms, and the other
Yes.
way around as well. Sometimes we're creating physical health symptoms from our stress and our anxiety being so high. And that's going to come down to inflammation in the body. If I
Mm-hmm.
eat a ton of sugar, if I eat a ton of processed foods, if I'm eating fast food, I'm creating inflammation in the body, and that
Right.
could look like anxiety, that could look like other mental health, depression. Or, if I'm so stressed constantly and I can't cope, and I can't bring my stress level down, that's also going to cause inflammation in the body. And then I might have something like IBS, irritable bowel
Right.
syndrome. And so it 100% goes both ways, which is why someone might come to me and not necessarily like that I am wanting them to tweak their diet, or cut
Mm-hmm.
out that pop or that caffeine, or cut out the alcohol and stop the fast food. They're going to be like, that's not what I came to you for.
Right.
Yes, but if you want to see results, you might need to consider this area as well. And it's not to say we can't work on things, mental health symptoms without, like we can still work on those things, but the progress is going to be severely limited if you're
Right.
completely ignoring your diet and your health. So,
Well, so much of it is so linked. And I mean, it just, so can we camp on health and fitness for just a moment?
yeah.
I would love to, because I think there's so much confusion out there. We have turned into this kind of dichotomy of a society. You've got the health and fitness on one hand, the extreme that is saying, you can only do this. And then we've got on the other hand, the health at every size movement and body positivity, which ultimately is a great thing, but there are some severe mixed messages out there with healthy eating and what that looks like. So I'm going to open that door for you.
Good, because I love it. I can go on this one forever. And this has been not only professionally, but a personal journey of mine as well over the years. And when I say years, I mean, okay, decades, it's been a journey in the practice professionally and personally, but I am on the camp of there is not one size fits all for anything, for exercise, for nutrition, nothing. Just like I will, use psychoeducation to talk with my clients about, mental health, some's nature, some's nurture. And the same goes for physical health, some's nature, some's nurture.
Right.
And we've got to try to work with what we've got and who we are. I'm a big fan of functional medicine. I'm a big fan of doing genetic testing and trial and error with what foods work well for me, what type of exercise. And because also, our bodies, they change over time. What came easier, worked well when I was in my 20s is not the same as in my 30s. And after having twins, I have a different body,
Right.
So we've really got to continuously tailor that to ourselves. In high school, I could eat cheese curds and pop and pizza every day. Now I cannot, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I cannot. And if I want to feel good mentally, emotionally, that means being in tune with my body and noticing it and paying attention to what foods have what effects on me that day, 3 days from then, in functional medicine, I've learned things like my liver wasn't processing things very well. I learned that I had sensitivities to oats, which was interesting because I had been telling my husband for I would say 9 months, where I'm like, I am in a brain fog. It won't go away. I'm not alert. I can't wake up. I can't get with it. Like something is off. And it lined up perfectly that never in my life had I decided to do this until the last 9 months. I was putting oat milk in my coffee every single day.
Interesting.
And then in that same time frame, my allergies had gone from my younger years, no allergies. And then all of a sudden I'm having seasonal allergies.
Right.
And then in that oat milk period, I'm having year round allergies. I'm like, I don't accept that. Like I'm
that
not
would make
accepting.
me cry.
Right. And I'm like, I'm not accepting. There was those moments of where age, I'm aging. I'm going to get old and fat, and
that's just what happens.
Right. Yes. And then I'm like, wait a minute. No, I do not accept that, because I know there are people older than me, healthier than me, stronger than me, and so yes, that one little thing of putting oat milk in my coffee was creating such havoc on my life,
Wow.
And that, also led me to the genetic testing and learning about other food sensitivities and what my body responds to with exercise and those kind of things. And it's a big black hole of information, but it's fascinating. And, I just can't get enough of it.
It is. And I think that's some of the problem. It's good and bad news, because it can be so intimidating. There's so much information out there just inundating us. And so much of it is misinformation, and so much of it is good information. How do you decipher what is good and not good, or true or not true? How do you figure that out?
Yes, the same way. So it's going to be baby steps, and it's going to be tailored to me, so I'll talk about with my clients, not everyone's going to believe or buy into functional medicine, or not everyone's going to believe or buy into this genetic test or whatnot. And, I'm not saying I'm right because I could be wrong. But here's the thing. If it's a placebo effect
Mm-hmm.
and it's working, I don't care, because
Right.
if that placebo effect works for me and my body and my mood and my happiness, I'm going to roll with it. So it is, at the end of the day, it's going to come down to what works well for me and my body and my life. And maybe what works well now, I find out in 6 months it's not working so well and I've got to reevaluate, and that's okay. So it's taking one little baby step at a time and chipping away at my health and fitness. There were times in my life where, like, counting all the calories and having a personal trainer and exercising 7 days a week
Mm.
was like, oh, that was amazing because I lost 25 pounds and I felt strong. But you know what? My mental health was suffering
Mm.
and I was obsessing, and that wasn't healthy for me. That wasn't the balance. And now,
Right.
full-time job and little twin kids, like, I don't have the time for that
Yeah,
either.
change it. Well, and twin kids, that'll keep you fit right there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I'm plenty busy and on my feet. Yes.
That's great. Well, and I think that is a great point because it changes over time. I'm
Hmm.
52, and what worked for me when I was 20 does not work for me today. And
Right.
so that was something that I had to really, well, and I continue to have to look at and say, okay, does this work? Does this work? Because it really is ever changing. And I think people
Yes.
think, okay, I got this. Now I'm going to stick with this and I'm good for life. But that's not the way it works, unfortunately.
Right. And that would be fantastic. But this
What?
whole,
I'm
like,
sorry. Hold
what
on.
was that?
Hey, I'm doing a podcast. That was my teenage son at home. Sorry about that.
I'm seeing things like
Look like a snake. Okay, someone's in trouble. Okay, we're gonna that's what editing is all about.
yes.
They grow up, but they don't really change. Just so
Right.
you know. What were we talking about? That threw me.
Oh yes, we were talking about, like, we never hit that point where we just, oh, I've got it and I'm going to
Yes.
coast from here. That self-improvement and, involving, it is a lifelong
Yeah,
process,
it is.
always.
It is. And that's, I think that's kind of a hard realization sometimes, but it's really important to to understand. So I love what you say about nutrition and health and medication, all of those things, because everything is so linked to that, and mental health and how we feel about ourselves and all of those pieces. And I think we don't take things as a whole very
Hmm.
often. We don't look at how we function fully as a whole, and that's something we really need to really make sure that we're doing at all times. So,
Oh, it's crucial, and it's hard
yeah.
because it's a full-time job, right?
Yeah,
Like,
no
if we look
kidding.
at every aspect of our life and how it's going, it's a lot. But it's more one of those things of, like, what's the best I can do is trying to balance and juggle these things, knowing that I will never have all areas and all environments in my life at 100% at the same time. But if I completely forget about one area of my life, things will be off. I'll be lopsided if one's at zero and these other ones are boosted up. We just want to keep them as balanced as we possibly can, which will never be perfectly
Yeah,
balanced.
that is so hard to do. I think always something to strive for, but boy, the word balance is a tough one because there's
Mhm.
always something, it seems, that is, when work is going great, family life is more difficult, and vice versa. So if you can make sure that at least you're doing what you can for self-care and health and things like that, I think that really helps that balance, even when it's not always 100% balanced.
Yeah, it's the constant check-ins and scanning, where am
Yeah.
I at? How am I doing? And just making sure that we're not completely avoiding or forgetting certain areas of our lives.
I love that. So tell me a little bit about how people can work with you, Carrie, in the work that you do. I know that some of that work can be online. Is that correct? Or is most of it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You tell me about what people can do with you.
Yes, absolutely. So when it comes to psychotherapy, I'm in the state of Iowa. So that, is going to be governed by my license, and to do therapy, that is going to be in Iowa. Now they do telehealth. So anyone in Iowa, anywhere. The coaching is something though that could be virtual
Mhm.
anywhere. And so that's really cool. And either way, whether it's psychotherapy or coaching, I am still going through I released a book in October, and I'm still going to walk through my step-by-step process and approach. They're just going to look a little bit different, whether
Sure.
it's psychotherapy or coaching. But at the end of the day, my kind of bread and butter and what I really like to nail down and focus in on is the negative belief system around somebody's problem or issue that they're, jumping into therapy or coaching for. I'm still going to identify those and work to clear those out.
I love that. Okay, so let's talk about the book, Therapize. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Therapize yourself. Okay, I love
Yes,
that.
it's not a real word. So, the confusion on it, that's understandable.
I like it. So tell me
Yeah.
about the book.
Yeah, so the book literally is kind of breaking down how I go about treatment and healing and growth and coaching, what, step by step, what approach I'm going to take and in what order. And it's also kind of that bridge in between. If you've never reached out for professional help in
Yeah.
any way, it's going to be that bridge in between doing it on your own and getting a feel for what it's like and what to expect, and verse coming in. And so it's going to be kind
Yeah.
of that prep work. And so it's kind of cool that you can walk yourself through your own little mini assessment and evaluate and identify, where am I doing well, where do I need to work on, and what's my biggest issue that I'm struggling with. And then there's exercises along the way to help you kind of like narrow down and pinpoint and getting a little more specific.
Okay, good. What would you say to people who have tried therapy, have done it, but cannot stand it, don't think it helps, just don't like therapy at all?
Yeah, I think that, honestly, I've had people have bad experiences in
Mhm.
therapy, and I think 100% of the time what that has come down to, from what I've heard or gotten feedback on, is that it wasn't the right match with the therapeutic
Sure.
relationship. It
Yeah.
wasn't the right therapist or coach for them. Um and it is going to sound funny and feel funny to shop around for therapists,
Mhm.
but it's really really important, because I do believe that the number one most important thing in seeing progress in therapy is that therapeutic relationship. There's got to be trust, it's
Yeah.
got to be a safe space, there's got to be respect. You've got to create that secure, safe, trusting relationship in order to tell somebody and work on your deepest darkest
Yeah.
fears and issues. So I really would encourage people to go it again and really nail down what they're looking for, what will work for them with a therapist. A lot of times I've heard people say, well, the therapist just listened. They didn't give me any feedback. And so they're going to want a little more direct therapist.
Sure. Right.
And then I've heard other people say that their therapist talked too much and they just wanted to
Yeah.
them to listen, and so it's really also going to be a vibe and an energetic thing that you've got to jump in and feel that out.
Yeah. And some of that is communicating that to the therapist, I would assume, because you only know what you know. And so, yeah.
Yes. Yes, I
Yeah.
definitely always encourage my clients, like, I cannot read your mind. I am not the expert on you. You are. So at any point, if you don't like the road that we're going down, cool, tell me.
Right,
And we go
right.
about it another route, because there isn't just one way.
That's great. That is great. Okay. Final question for you.
Yeah.
What does resilience mean to you?
Ooh, resilience to me is what I've learned for myself. Learning to not only be okay and accept, I'm going to do air quote failure,
Right, right.
but actually getting to a point where, I see failure as growth and opportunity. Like, oh, I really bombed that one, or that didn't work out as planned, but cool. Now I know, moving on, and that I can bounce back a lot quicker, because failure to me isn't a bad thing. I'm not saying it's easy or feels good, but failure to me is, all right, I'm living and I'm doing and I learned, and on to the next, because life is going to keep going on anyway. So, right,
Love
I'm
that.
pick up and go.
That is great. I love it. Okay, Carrie. So where can people find you?
Yeah, the two top spots are going to be my website, carrieleaf.com, and then my Instagram. And I try to stay on top of that and post. I struggle with social media, so just be aware of that.
I'm with you.
It's a thing, but those are going to be the two best spots.
That is great. And I will make sure to put all that information, including your book, in the notes of the podcast. And this has been great. Good stuff. I love talking to you and getting some insight and wisdom and all the things I like to talk about. So thank you.
Yes, my pleasure. I could talk about it all day with you.
Yes,
this is great.
Yes. Well, maybe we'll just have to have you back again. So
I'd love to.
wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Carrie. We appreciate you being with us. And thank you for joining us on Resilience in Life and Leadership. See you next time.
Thank you for listening. Please share with anyone you think will benefit from this podcast.